Welcome to BookHuddle. I'm your host, Karen Reader with Readgab. Today we have author Dhonielle Clayton, and I'm thrilled to have her on. She has written this amazing series that she's in the middle of. We'll get to where she's at in the series, I guess. I don't know how many more are coming, but we've got 3 out, and they are just stunning, powerful books. I can't wait to discuss all about them with her. But first, Dhonielle, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you in addition to being an author.
Sure. My name is Dhonielle Clayton, and I am from the Washington, D.C. suburbs on the Maryland side. I was a children's librarian and secondary school teacher, teaching English and ELA and all of that good stuff for many years. And I am the New York Times bestselling author of the Conjuverse series and also many other books. And I run a nonprofit called We Need Diverse Books. I'm board chair. And yes, I'm always up to mischief.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I do not know how you do it all. There's another thing on your site that it says you do too, right? COO of something else.
Yes, so I run what's called an IP company, which is hard to understand, but I basically come up with stories
Uh-huh.
and I hire writers to write them and teach them about the book business and the writing business by giving them a piece of my own imagination and teaching them how to execute so that they can enter the publishing arena. So I have about 100 of those books that have come from my imagination that are on the shelves, but
Ah,
some
that is
so
incredible how you do just so much and so well-rounded and so much to do with literacy though. Like that seems like that is your thing, literacy all around, but you just keep having ideas and got to keep doing more, right?
yes, I see myself as like an octopus with many arms,
Nice.
and each arm is something related to books because I fell in love with books as a young person and I'm just crazy about them. I just
Oh,
love them so much.
I love it. That is awesome. All right, so we're going to do an author icebreaker, the book Night Books. I love it. It's beautifully creepy. So this witch draws these kids into her creepy apartment by having something going on, either a smell or a scary video for the one kid. There's something going on that draws them there. What would it be for you that could be your trap, that it would draw you into the witch's apartment?
So two things.
Okay.
A fresh chocolate chip cookie, if you put it in a skillet and you cook it and then you put ice cream on top and like
Oh, it's
whipped cream.
hot.
Yeah, well, it's hot. And then like drizzle it with chocolate sauce or caramel sauce
Yes.
or a sticky toffee pudding with ice cream.
Yes.
Or if my favorite animal are quokkas, they're these little animals that live in Australia. They smile. They're little marsupials. You should look them up. They're the cutest. And they're very friendly because they don't have natural predators. So if one was waiting at the door for me with a skillet cookie, I'd be a goner.
All
So
there for you. No regard for what else is going on.
nope, I'm in there. I'm like a cookie and I get to cuddle a quokka.
Yes,
Excellent. Great.
absolutely. That would be your downfall.
My downfall is sweets and cute animals that are
Little
small.
critters. Oh, I love it. So I'm seeing you in one of the critters and not, yeah, one of the characters in your book then, but we'll get to
That's
that.
right.
So tell us about the Conjureverse.
Sure, yes. So when I was a teacher and librarian in East Harlem, New York, my students were bothering me about why there wasn't a magic school for kids who looked like them. They came from all over the world. They spoke many different languages. They were from all different kinds of places. And they were frustrated that all of these magic schools were somewhere else. And so when you're in fourth grade and fifth grade, you sometimes have a lot of energy and you aren't afraid to bother your teachers. And so they would write me notes and letters every day. And so I decided to build a new magic school, the magic school of the future, where every single kind of kid can come. So the Conjureverse takes place at this magic school in the sky called the Arcanum Training Institute for Marvelous and Uncanny Endeavors. And it is about two groups of magical people that don't always get along, and about the first conjure student, because there are marvelers in this world. They have something magical about them, something marvelous. And there are conjurers in this world who are also marvelous, but they have a different kind of magic and they have some issues. And it's about the first conjure student, Ella Duran, to ever get to go to this magic school in the sky. And it's about her adventures and who she meets and her magical classes and all of the secrets that the marvelers have that they don't want people to know. But somehow Ella starts digging around.
And she's gonna stir it all
So
up. Oh, does
She's
she ever
known.
stir that pot? And I love it so much. I love Ella. I love the powerful characters. You write such deep characters, even your supporting characters. They are so amazing. And so I mentioned we just have to talk about this because you were talking about the cute little critters. Tell us about the character that's reflected in that with the critters.
Sure. So Ella gets two friends when she goes to the magic school. One is Bridget, who I hope we get to talk about. She's a little bit grumpy. And then the other one is Jason. He's a boy who um, comes from a big family of lots of different siblings who have come to the school, so he knows a lot about it. So they assign Jason to be Ella's guide for her first year to help her get to her classes, to help her adjust to the Marvellian way. And Jason is a little bit anxious as a person, and he'd rather be around animals. He works in the menagerie, and he always has an animal in his pocket or around him at all times. Because he has a special connection with them, not to spoil it. And if you see the cover of The Marvelers, the first book in the series, he's holding a special little chubby creature called a wombi, which is based on a wombat. They are endangered and they live at the school and they're taken care of. And so I love little squishy fat like creatures. Most of them come from Australia. I went on a trip to Australia and I fell in love with their weirdo animals. And I said, let me make them all magical. And wombats are so cute. If you've ever seen a baby wombat, you will just
Oh, I have
fall.
not, but now I'm going to look that up as soon as we finish. Oh,
They're little and they poop squares, which I found fascinating. So very weird. So these are the kind of
squares.
things that
Oh, that is fantastic. All right, let's talk about Bridget then. So she has a unique background, right? Because she comes from a fool background, kind of, right? Is she one of the
Mhm.
students who does?
Yes. So, right. So Ella's other friend, Bridget, she hates everything.
She,
She did not grow up in the Marveler world at all. She grew up outside of the Marveler world, just like Ella. And so the people in my world who don't have magic are called fools. It's spelled like Fewels. They can't see magic, hear magic, experience magic. And so she grew up around them, just like Ella did. But Ella wants to be at the magic school and Bridget doesn't. And Bridget has a little bit of a bad attitude. She doesn't want to do her work.
she
She
does the
like,
understatement of the day.
yeah, she's just not into it. And she's a little grumpy. And those were my favorite kinds of kids when I was a teacher because they just needed connection. They needed to feel good and feel community and have someone they could count on. And Bridget has had a lot of people let her down. And so her and Ella are foils. They're opposites in terms of temperament, personality. So they become these sort of reluctant friends, and she can knit and she loves to knit and she makes things. And it's part of what is marvelous about Bridget as she discovers, even though she doesn't want to be magical, she just wants to go back to New York City and reset her life. And she doesn't
Right.
like all these stuffy magic school kids.
Yes, and I do. I find it endearing. I don't know. I connect with her. Maybe I'm a grump. I don't know. I just read another book, kind of like there were a couple grumps in there too, and I find I love them. I love a grumpy character, especially when you get to, you just get to see more and more about them. I love it so much. So, why do you feel that's important? We talked about the kids wanting to be seen. Why else is it important to have a full cast of diverse characters in a book?
Well, the promise that I made for this series was this was going to be the future of magic schools. And the future means that everyone is considered, that we
Yes.
care about every single person in our community, that we see them and that we include them and we have a place for them. And so I wanted to create a global magic school. It's not attached to any one country. The
Right.
magic school moves all over the world, changing locations every year. It also never looks the same way twice.
Love it.
And I wanted to deliver on that promise because I honestly believe in order for us to reach young people and keep them excited about books and engaged in literacy and literature and caring about these things, we have to make space for them. And so I wanted to create a magic school where anyone could pick it up. Anyone could pick it up and find themselves in the small details, in the big details, in the food that's in the cafeteria, in them just being considered and their cultures and backgrounds and families being considered because so many children's books, I have a master's in children's literature, I was a children's librarian, do not consider all children. And so I feel like children's literature is the best literature in the world. And we have an opportunity to set a table for all of the kids to come and eat and to come and enjoy, even when we might focus on one character that might be like them or not like them, a mirror or a window, we still can do that. And I just think that we are not being honest if we do not set the table for all the kids, because there are all different kinds of kids all over the world. And so it is, I think that it is dishonest to not create a global world when you're writing. And so that's what I set out to be. And that's what my students were. They were from all over the globe. So
It is so beautiful. And I love that, like you said, you've got your one main character, but then we have so much that you just do this incredible job of developing all these side characters. And they're so powerful and there's so much depth to them. We don't just see just a brief little line about them. We see so much about them. And that is where people get to see and have those connections, because really, is a one-liner ever a connection? Is a paragraph ever a connection? No. But these really, I'm surprised that it's not a tome, your books, just because you do such a beautiful job with the words of really representing everybody really, really well. And so I'm going to transition to talking about politics, because the next question I wanted to ask actually is about the future of the youth reading today. So first, let's talk about how it's intensely political, and how does that affect children, either in the book or for real, when there's an intense political climate going around in their lives.
oh, you mean the climate of America is intense
Oh,
in the world?
that or the Marvelers, that is very, very
Oh,
similar.
right. Well, I didn't, I wrote this book. I started this book in 2016.
Right?
And then I sold it in 2017 and it didn't come out until 2022.
Hmm.
So I wasn't thinking about the politics of America like on the nose, but
Right.
I was worried. And so what I put into the world are my worries about where we were headed and what I was seeing and what I thought was coming on the horizon. So I have a lot of people writing to me being like, "Oh my gosh, there are so many parallels to
Yes.
what's going on." And they're like, "Did you know?" And I was like, "No, I was just worried." And this is what I was worried about for young people in the world that they're going to inherit based on the mess that adults have made for them to clean up. And I thought that if I could use fantasy as a way to talk about some of these issues that can be really hard, um, my students came from lots of different homes with lots of different viewpoints, and some things are allowed to be discussed and some things aren't. And I thought a book is a safe place for young people to work out tough topics. And it's just a story, right? And
That's
I
right.
always thought value of that was that we could talk through the politics of the world that doesn't exist. Marvelers and conjurers don't exist. However, they have lots of parallels to things that really do exist and affect people's lives. And so when I started to write this series, it really came out of a conversation that I had with my dad,
Mhm.
where we were talking about my dad's from Mississippi.
Okay.
And we were talking about his childhood and him having to integrate schools in the American
Oh,
South in the
yeah.
60s. And I thought, and living in different communities and having to be bused, and how he felt about that. And my parents have differing opinions on it. And I thought, oh, I could use just my parents' differing opinions on whether you stay home or whether you go as a backbone. And then I thought maybe I could actually make the Conjureverse series a parallel to school integration
Yes.
in the American South, but not, so that you
Yeah.
can talk about it without talking about it. And
I
so
love
that's
that.
where I brought politics into the book as a way to also have a conversation with young people about politics now, so that they could feel safe talking about my characters and my world, but also talking about what's going on in their communities at the same time.
I'm just so in love with that. It gives me goosebumps, because I feel like too many adults, whether in person or on social media, do not know how to have what I consider an adult discussion, but they're adults, so it's not a mature and appropriate discussion about differences and differing opinions. I wish that more people could do that, and I'd love that your book is providing this, that we don't even have to say this is parallel to what's going on in America, right? Because like you said, it's just a story. These are just the Marvelers and the Conjureverse, it's just a story. So let's talk about people who disagree. You guys are conjurers, you guys are marvelers. Let's start having a discussion. And, after they've read the book, have them start building these skills. I think that is so beautiful what you've done there.
Oh, I appreciate it. And it just comes out of being a teacher and librarian and wanting to have kids critically think about what they're reading and think about and make connections to things that they are understanding about the world around them. I had really great teachers growing up. I couldn't have gotten to where I am without a really good librarian who I bothered all the time. And then also without really great teachers who forced me and pushed me to look beyond the page. Like, what are these ingredients here and what are they making you feel and think about? And I just wanted young people, and it's why I created the book isn't just told in regular chapters, it's told in interstitial media, because that's the like, is this a reputable source? Is this misinformation or disinformation or malinformation? Is this what's happening here? Is this manipulative? Is this persuasive? Is this, I want them to be able to say, wait a second, they're lying. This newspaper lies. Every time this newspaper article comes up, they're telling lies, or it's sensationalized, or it's creating stereotypes. And so the kids can be so astute, but they have to be taught digital
Yeah.
literacy.
Well,
And
and
so
even even if, because both newspapers are being represented of both sides. And I love that too, because you're not just picking a side. You're not just, so the person who was assigned in the class to represent the conjure folk doesn't have to feel like, well, yeah, my side's always telling little lies in the newspaper. Well, no, because the marvelers are doing the same thing and everybody wants to spin the way that it benefits them. And so
exactly.
consider that, how do we consider what happens when somebody has a purpose besides sharing news?
Right. And what is the truth? Right. And how do you have a conversation with young people about propaganda and what it looks like? How do you do that? And I thought that this book would be a great way for teachers to be able to say, tell me what is propaganda. Tell me what you think is true.
Right.
Ella's out here unearthing the truth, but people are smearing her. People are also writing this and that. How do we create caricatures of people through media? How do we tell lies about them so that then when they walk through the door, we have all of these preconceived notions about who they are before we meet them? And so it's just a small thing with these small articles, but I just thought it could be an instrument for young people to talk about the things that they write about other people,
Yeah.
the things that are written about them, the things they read in the newspaper or hear on the news or hear their parents say, and say,
Mhm.
like, what is the truth? There are three
Yes.
sides to every story. So,
And for kids to consider, what are they going to repeat and how are they going to repeat it?
mhm,
Because they need to consider that before they share with somebody else or go telling somebody else. And so for
right. And
them to
how do
see
we
it in
keep
the
an open
story,
mind?
they feel indignant for Ella, right? And so
They
it
get
gives
mad.
them pause to,
They do get mad and
yeah,
they want to like correct everything. So when I go to school visits, they're like, why won't you let her yell? And I was like, at a certain point, you can yell and yell and yell, and certain people won't believe you. You can say the
right?
sky is blue, and there's going to be someone that says, no, it's orange because my mom told me it was orange.
Yes.
So, so it's like one of those things where I just wanted the kids to have strong reactions to
Yeah.
both sides, both
Yeah.
sides. No one goes without trouble here.
Yes.
So,
Because
you
really, is
know.
that really going to get anybody to change their mind yelling at them?
No.
Because
How
that,
do you fix a wound? Like that, I think is the deeper undercut of the whole series.
right,
When a group has been wronged, how do you actually fix it? How do you
right.
enact restorative justice? How
Yeah.
do you come together? How do you fix something?
Because, yeah,
We
well,
have
while
so
certain people are still doing things that are wrong, they might say, well, I wasn't the one. I wasn't the
right.
one who, did this and this to the architect. I wasn't the one. But what are you still doing after that? And so then we can consider in our current society, yeah, you weren't the one who did this. It was your ancestors. But what are you doing now?
What are you doing now? And what are you going to do about it? And are you going to stand up? And how do you help fix it? We can't go back and change things, but we can get better. How do we get better? And so that is like one of the core questions. And Ella's wrestling with, okay, if I'm digging up all of this stuff. And at the end of book 3, it's like, what do I do with it now? Like now that it's out in the open, when the stink is in the open, like how do we clean it up
Yeah,
so that both sides feel good? And what happens when people want revenge? What happens
right.
when they want retribution? What happens when that is owed? A debt has to be paid. So, it's tough. I'm finishing up the draft of the 4th book, and it's like, ugh, it's rough.
Right.
It's rough
I
here.
bet. Because you have so many things to say, and then you've got to tie everything together and you've got a lot of characters that need representation now that you've introduced them, and we need to hear their stories, man. There is so much going on. Oh wow. So let's talk about living in two worlds. Like Ella very much lives in two worlds. Do you feel that that's applicable, that kids can live in two worlds and be successful and happy? Because some are told, hold true to your roots, or hold true to your culture. What about kids now? And,
Sure.
both sides.
My students lived in two worlds. I lived in two worlds, right? My students would come to school and speak English and go home and speak a completely different language, right? And have completely different customs and culture and all of that than when they walk through the doors of that school. So there's so many kids that function in two different spaces. And so Ella is really based off of, I was not like Ella. I was definitely more like Bridget. Even though my grades were great, I was definitely grumpy, but I was one of two Black children in my class.
Right.
So in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So I represented my entire community and culture
Okay.
in the, not to date myself. And so that was my experience. I had to be perfect and I had to be pleasant. And even though I wasn't all the time, but I had to fake it. And
Right.
so I wanted to talk about the pressure that is put on you when you're the only person who looks like you in a classroom and the weight of that. But I wanted to have a magical metaphor for it,
Right.
and discuss it. And there are
Because
so many
again,
kids.
that's where you feel safe and comfortable discussing something like that.
It is. And there are plenty of books in the contemporary space that talk about this. But I love fantasy. That's what I grew up reading and loving. And I thought that having this conversation in fantasy would also be have some value for those who love magic as an outsider, right? So she's an outsider, but she's not a non-magical outsider. She
Right.
just has a different.
A different kind of magic.
Exactly.
And not readily accepted.
Exactly. And so I think it's similar to when we teach girls having to exist in spaces with all boys, right? Like there is a thing that changes,
Right.
that you have to adapt for, dealing with difference. And I think a lot of people, I think every person can relate to living in two worlds, living in two spaces,
Right.
depending on what they have. Everyone has something going on.
Yes.
Everyone has something,
Absolutely.
whatever it is, right? People who are able-bodied versus people who aren't, and having to navigate the world, and existing in two spaces, one that accommodates you and one that doesn't, one that's more hostile. So I think that every kid can relate to navigating two different worlds. The world of home and away are two different things
Yeah.
as well.
And you can be successful in both and happy.
Absolutely.
You can find happiness in both. So you talked about that it's so important that each of these different groups of diverse groups that they're seen. But why is it important that they understand each other? Because we want them seen, but also this empathy. Why?
I think that books are the best tool for empathy. And I think that our world, particularly right now, lacks so much empathy. I think that parents, educators, teachers, and stakeholders in the community, the adults, are making a mess. And that will trickle down. The fish rots from the head, right?
Right.
So I think that we're doing a really bad job modeling for young people understanding and empathy and connection.
Right.
And I think the books are going to have to start doing the work if we're not modeling them. And so for me, in the Conjureverse series, there are people from all over the world. They wear translation crystals. They speak many different languages. And sometimes I feel like many multicultural spaces or cities and cosmopolitan cities have diversity as like we're great. We've got everybody here.
Good. Look, we're represented.
Exactly. But if everybody's not talking and respecting each other and honoring each other, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You're just there as tokens,
Right.
right? We've got this person and this one's, and tokens get spent. They literally it can go away very quickly if you do not actually try to create understanding and build bridges. And so that's what I was trying to showcase through this book. Instead of a conversation about people who don't have magic and people who have magic, I wanted to talk about both people are equally interesting, equally fascinating in terms of their magic and power, and they have some deep wounds that need airing out, and they need mutual respect. But
Yeah.
and the only way to get that is with the truth.
Yes.
If we don't tell the truth about what happened and we don't understand it and honor it, we can never come together. And so that's why I think societies that have everyone, that don't function in a way that makes space for everyone to be understood, will fail.
Right. Oh,
So
I love it. So, so powerful. So you've had worries that you wrote were worries, and you had hopes that you were writing for all these kids in your life. Has there been anything now that the books have been out when did the first Marvelers come out?
in 2022,
All right, 2022. We've, it sounds like one a year then. We've had these books out. Have you encountered anything unexpected that there were themes that people got that you were like, oh, I hadn't thought about that when I wrote it.
I mean, young people are astute readers. So sometimes they'll send me email or send me letters because I have a PO box and I like a good old fashioned letter, and I'll
Yes.
write them where I'm like, oh, did I do that? And so sometimes I have to write back and be like, oh, I didn't remember, but yes, thank you. I think what the unexpected thing is the love of the magical creatures and the magical animals.
Yes.
Um, I think that young people, children are obsessed with creatures. And so I think they really like the different creatures and that I have. Some are familiar to them and some are not. So I think that has been unexpected, the obsession. I'm getting a lot of doodles and drawings and
Oh, of creating the visuals for you.
they're like, I made a graphic novel of your book. Here, you know what I mean? Here are the
Oh, that's
panels.
so fun.
Yeah, it's cute.
Oh, that
Yeah.
is
So
just awesome.
that's been great. I think with adult readers, they're seeing the breadcrumbs. I wanted to create a book, and this is what I think is great about children's literature when it's written, thinking about that the book can be enjoyed on two levels,
Yeah.
with the level of the child and the level of the adult. And I, as a former librarian, always say that readers are made in the laps of other readers. So I encourage parents to read with their young people and engage with them. And I wanted this book, when adults read it, they can see it. They see exactly the layers I'm leaving behind. They can hear it. And then the children slowly get that the music gets louder and their understanding gets louder of what I'm trying to do as they get, to the fourth book. So I wanted it to be read on many levels. And the adults are really picking up on things like that. The president that wins my election, his
Yes.
initial very familiar to a president that might have been assassinated in the 60s, right? Like that there are certain names of individuals that might
Yes.
mirror or echo real people. They're seeing my
Right.
breadcrumbs. So that's been fun to get letters from adults being like, I felt like a child again. And then I saw
That's
all
so
these things
fun.
you did. And, I see the 1960s influence here. And,
Nice.
they're seeing my Easter eggs. So it's
Oh,
been nice.
I think it's so beautiful. And, a lot of adults feel like once a kid reaches a certain age, you branch out of reading aloud to them. And
Never.
I've got ages 4 to 15, almost 16. And when we read our books aloud, this 15-year-old's just as into it as my 8-year-old. And so the kids still get so into a good read aloud. They like having books read to them. If we didn't enjoy having books read to us, why would audiobooks be such a huge thing? Which, by the way, your audio, phenomenal. Those accents and the emotion she portrays, incredible. But
Such a good.
yeah, the kids still want to do that. And I mean, me and my husband will sometimes do that. Less so now that we have all of our kids growing up. We used to do it more before we had a house
I
full
mean,
of
I
kids.
want to be read too. I
Right?
would, there's nothing better than like someone just reading out loud to you. It's just, I don't know.
Yes.
It's very relaxing.
Me and my husband take turns, and we used to always do, so we still do it at Christmas, and we would do Christmas story every year. And now we're finding different books to do because we've read it so many times. And sometimes I'd fall asleep and he'd be like, I'm not reading to you if we fall asleep. And I was like, well, we've read it 5 times and it's so nice to listen to you read to me. Like you were saying, it's nice to be read to.
Yeah,
And so
it
kids,
brings it's
yeah,
just like so relaxing. And I
yes,
just think it settles your nervous system. There's
right?
something it can reactivate that childhood
Yes.
comfort.
Powerful
So
connections, and the discussions don't need to be while you're reading it. You don't need to stop the story later in the car or during dinner. You can have these
exactly.
powerful conversations and, hey, did you even think about this? Bring those up, and it's incredible.
My
So,
dad used to have a book on tape every day on the way to school. So that was like my
yeah,
childhood. So I love hearing stories in the car and stories while I'm walking. And I just want to be surrounded by stories.
right. So beautiful. I love it. So you said book 4 is what you're working on right now. Is this going to be the last? Will there be a book 5? What is the future of the Conjureverse?
So I've planned it out.
Okay.
So I'm about to, my publisher would like more. The children have spoken. They are
Yes.
enjoying very much. I think Marvelers is in its 10th printing, which is wild, which is very, very good.
Yay,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm very excited. So yes, I think we're gonna do some things. We need to go into that. We might go into that upper school. We might see
Yes.
what Winnie, Ella's little sister is up to
Oh,
because
that'd
I'm
be fun.
up to some mischief. That is very helpful. We might even see some of the villains. We've got some things to do.
Plenty of side stories out there.
I enjoy a villain more than a hero, actually. So,
Oh,
um,
villains are so fun. In acting, 2 of my kids are in theater, and you always want to play the villain.
you really do. And it's why I included the villain's point of view in this novel. Also because I love writing a villain, but
Yeah,
I wanted readers to question, is she wrong?
right.
Where is she wrong and where is she not wrong? And do you understand her? What
Yeah.
is good and what is bad and why? And do those definitions shift
Yeah.
based on who's what?
Yeah, and explaining is not exculpate, exculpating. Explaining is not exculpating. That we can explain and show the different sides and what motivates somebody with not justifying them.
That's
We
right.
don't have
She's
to,
still a bad person.
right? Yeah, but we can still see that side and have maybe even have a little bit of compassion or more understanding for her as we have that explained. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I think kids like a villain. They like to understand, why is this person doing
yeah,
this?
yeah,
And it's like, oh no, and it was so fun too.
yes, of course. All right, so
Yeah.
share with us. You've just talked about so much your love for literature. Tell us one of your favorite children's books. I know you probably have a huge list.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. Because I'm a former librarian, may I have two? Because
Absolutely.
you can't just have one.
I know you can't ever
I
pick
must
one.
have two. Okay, so one is Valentina Salazar is not a monster hunter, and it's by
I've
a writer named
never heard of it. When did it come out?
Oh good. I think it came out in 2003, but don't quote me on that.
Okay,
By
that's
Zoraida Cordova. So
okay.
Valentina Salazar is not a monster hunter, and it's about this cute girl named Valentina, of
Yes.
course, and her family protects magical creatures, and she's got to go around in like I think it's like a van, like a old Volkswagen
Yes.
van with her family and go save these magical creatures that are under duress. And it's so fun and so funny. And I'm not going to spoil it, but she's protecting them because something is haunting them.
Oh,
Uh,
so cool.
and then I love a book called The Devouring Wolf by Natalie C. Parker. The
Okay.
cover is extraordinary. And it's about all of these kids out in the prairie in Kansas. When they turn a certain age, they turn into a wolf. But you have to find your pack. And if you don't find your pack, the devouring wolf may be summoned for you.
Oh,
And it is just a gorgeous,
oh,
fun middle grade, just about friendship, found family, what it means to turn into a werewolf, you figuring out your body, all that
oh,
weird stuff. But like,
yes. Sounds
wolf pack.
intense. Love it.
It's good. It's good and it's fun. Um, and yeah, those two are just wonderful, wonderful middle grades that I just find joyful and remind me of being 11.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I feel like I'm pretty versed in different children's literature, and I have not even heard of either of those. Usually, if I haven't read the book, I've at least heard of it when people bring things up.
Yes,
So,
check
all
them
right,
out. Yeah.
add to the list. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time to talk with us today, and especially for taking so much time to put so much heart and emotion and love into this series for kids.
Thank you so much for having me and also for reading my work and coming to my magic school. It's for
Yes,
everyone.
of course. Beautiful. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about the Conjuverse by Dhonielle Clayton. If you enjoy my podcast, BookHuddle, I would love for you to take a minute and rate and review it on your podcast platform. That will help more people find BookHuddle. Now go and have a fantastic week reading some amazing books.